and her mouth widened in a laugh that lost itself in the hum of chatter. There was something about the way she carried herself. Her spine was almost too straight, and her gaze slid in a manner he assumed she thought covert. She glanced at the cards in her hand and, quick as sin, slipped something from her wide sleeves before fanning the stack in front of her. Never once did she slouch to mask her movements, nor even attempt to duck. No. In full view of the table and with speed a veteran pickpocket would envy, she cheated. She spread her cards on the table with a victorious smile and rose slightly from her seat to rake in her stolen coin. Connor found Delilah's face in a sea of many, met her gaze, and looked pointedly toward the table. He'd found their new girl. Ariana Fitzroy had been too greedy. She gave a charming smile to the men at the table and pulled a pile of coins toward herself. They clinked against one another, the merry tinkling rising above the din of laughter and conversation. How she'd come to love the sound of her winnings. Tonight, though, she'd taken it a mite too far. She'd gone beyond what she needed for the merchant's bills, the servant's pay, and the rent on her meagre lodgings. The coins were cool against the warmth of her palm. Winning always gave her such a heady rush, a wash of heat spreading from her cheeks to her chest and all the way down to her satin-slippered toes. A discomforting sensation settled on Ariana, one of which she'd always been especially wary. The weight of being watched. A woman with dark blonde hair had joined the table and regarded her with a quiet curiosity. Her red lips lifted into a smile, and Ariana noted she had a slight freckle beside her generous mouth. Ariana looked down at the cards being dealt out before them, severing the connection. The last thing she needed was one of the girls at court trying to make friends with her. Not here. Not like this. Perhaps a year prior, when she'd had not a care in the world, when all her possessions were paid for with unseen coin. She piled the cards against one another in an indiscernible stack, enabling her to see the faces with discretion while masking the number of cards displayed. The hand was not in her favor, but then, was it ever? Ariana glanced up at the blonde again and found the other woman's gaze had settled somewhere across the room. Perfect. Ariana tucked her hands lower against the table as if she were deep in concentration, and truly she was. In deep concentration of feeling the sharp edge of the card in her sleeve and sliding it out before anyone noticed. Her heart pounded in her chest and her breath came faster. It always did when she cheated at cards. Cheated. How she despised the word. How she despised the necessity of it. Yet she loved winning. The knowledge that for one more day or week or month she could afford to live. A warning nipped at the back of her mind. She'd been at the table too long and had won too much. She risked discovery. A man settled at the table beside her before the final round of the game could conclude. "Good evening to you, lass." His congenial tone was laced with a heavy Scots accent. She turned toward him and met his warm hazel eyes. "Good evening to you as well, sir." She'd never spoken to a Scotsman before, nor actually seen one up close. There was a wildness in the way his brown hair fell to his shoulders, and in how he'd failed to scrape the whiskers from his face, leaving the hard lines of his jaw shadowed and dark. "Have you had much luck tonight?" she asked. His gaze slipped to the neat stacks of coins in front of her. "No as much as ye, my lady." She let her own stare trail over her piles of winnings. Shame sizzled against her cheeks. She had definitely been too greedy. Perhaps she would do well to lose several hands for good measure. "I have been quite lucky tonight," she said in as humble a tone as she could muster. The lie sat bitter on her tongue. Was this how far she'd sunk? From an earl's daughter to a lying, cheating pauper with naught but a good name.